When words of resentment or unforgiveness come out of my mouth, you know what's in my heart. It's the blood test for what's wrong with our spiritual heart. Angry words, I know what's in your heart. And it's one thing to have anger and resentment and negativity and unfaithfulness and doubt come out of your mouth, but when it reveals what's in your heart, it shows there's disease there, there's a problem there. We don't deal with that, it's going to cause other problems, and it's going to kill you spiritually. You might be asking, all right, David, you got me. Those are my symptoms too. But how did I get there? Was I given why did God give me a bad heart then? Why was I born with a bad heart? You weren't. You have to wrestle with that whole sin thing that came into Adam and that part. We're born into a broken world pretty quickly. That stuff's contagious. You can't be around someone who's sick very long without catching that, right? So as we're born into the world pretty quickly, it comes upon us. But you might be asking, if I have a weak, broken, diseased heart, how did it get that way? And there's really only one answer, and you'd expect a preacher to say this, especially on a Sunday morning. It's sin. Now at the same time, you thought, yeah, maybe you're going, okay, hang on, I was following you because you were using this story about the heart, and I see the parallels, but then you started sounding real religious right there. Sin, isn't that one of those church words, right? Well, let's define that in light of what we're talking about. What is sin? Just basically not doing things God's way. You know, there's also medical sin. You know, when the doctor tells you to quit doing some things that are bad for you, and you ignore it, you don't do what the doctor says, and your body pays the price. When he says, you know what, you need to do more things like this and eat more of these things because it's going to help your heart, and you don't do it, we kind of, quote, sin against our doctor, right? We don't do what he's trying to do. Well, that doctor just doesn't want me to have fun. That's why he's telling me to do that. We never say that, do we? That's what we say to God. And if we think that physician, that he or she cares about us, that's why she's trying to tell us to stop doing these things that hurt you and start doing more of these things that help you make your heart stronger. I wonder how much more God does the same thing. All of his instructions for us are to protect us or provide blessing for us. When we start seeing it that way, instead of being upset and angry at the instructions that come, maybe it opens us up to say, you know what, some things just make sense. We understand why, right? There's some things that maybe because of family history, you're like, oh, you know what? I've seen the destruction that sin does. You look out in the world, and it's easy to look at certain things and go, oh, I've seen the direct result of that sin. I get why where God says, don't do that. Or I've seen the benefit of this positive thing. I get why he tells me to do that, because when all of us do that, we make the world a better place, and it just makes things better. But every once in a while, we come to one, right, you're like going, I don't get that one. Much like when your doctor tells you something, right? And you don't, like, okay, I don't get that. I don't know about that. At some point, what you have to do is decide, who do I think is smarter, me or my doctor? Am I going to trust him or her? Or am I going to say, no, I'm going to take this on my own? And that's the question we have to answer when we wrestle with God, as he's giving us treatment options, and as he's giving us ways to strengthen our heart, protect our heart against spiritual heart disease. When we ignore or refuse to do what God has told us, it invites disease into our spiritual heart. It's all sin. And there's really, Hebrews 3, chapter 3, verse 12, tells us that really that's the only problem, sin. It says, see to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. A heart that turns away from God's way. Sinful. Let's break the word down. What does it mean? To be full of sin. When someone has cancer, what's wrong? They're full of cancer. When someone has some other disease, what's wrong? You're full of that disease. Do you know that medically, many of us have small parts of many diseases in our body? We just have the strength to fight them off in our white blood cells. So then when it pops up, a strong body says, oh, I see you, and it attacks those things and it gets rid of it. What happens, it's not that we're disease-free, it's that we have a strength that overcomes those diseases in our bodies. Where someone's immune system is compromised, what happens is the tiniest cold can come to them, and it's going to wreak havoc in their bodies. We have it all inside of us. What are we? We're full of sin. Two categories. I'm going to do real quickly because this is important for us to understand. Two categories of sin. Sin done by us. Okay, that's the one we typically hear about. You know the ones, right? It's the stuff that you look under your nails this morning, that kind of the remnants of it are still there from the dirt, the grime, in the world, wherever we've been this week and in our lives. That we do bad things that it invites disease into our hearts. That's why God says, don't do those things. It hurts you, and I love you too much. The second category is sin done against us. Sometimes it's completely innocent. It's babies born with crack addictions. Sin done against them, not by them. And we have similar things that whenever ugliness and sin is done against us, it still affects us. And that's why he tells us don't do those things, because it hurts not only you, but it hurts other people. Maybe you grew